morning, everybody! I'm way too enthusiastic for this time in the morning. I don't know why. I'm a little bit concerned, but anyway, hello. And today's Vlogmas Day 11. And today I'm going to be doing another vlog, which is reading the highest rated book on my TBR. Chestnut roasting. I came up with this concept from some sprints I was doing. I cannot remember which sprints, but I was sprinting. And we were talking about Becca's Bookopoly, and there was a prompt in Becca's Bookopoly which was your highest rated and then your lowest rated TBR book. So for fun, me and the people on the sprints were looking up what they were, and it just made me want to do a vlog reading them. So this is a two-part series in Vlogmas, so there will be another video. Oh my god. Don't be so dramatic. So yeah, I will have a second part to this, which will be my lowest rated book. So that'll be later on in Vlogmas. But today we're doing the highest rated. So I went on to Goodreads, I went to my TBR, and then I changed the ordering of how things would show, that it would go via rating, and I put it as high ratings first. And the book that came up, drumroll please, was Homegoing! Ah! I have wanted to read this book for years. It's like years and years and years. This was one of like the first books. Okay, no, that's not true. So like I first started watching BookTube when there wasn't many booktubers. This is like going like 10 years ago. And like everyone was just reading like YA paranormal kind of thing. That was kind of all that was read. You know, we've seen a lot of changes in BookTube, and then it kind of went on to the next phase. And I feel like this was one of the first books in that like next phase that I heard about and really wanted to read. And so this has been something I've wanted to read for a very long time. It is a generational story about two sisters. One is sold into slavery, one a slave trader's wife. The consequences of their fate reverberate through the generations that follow. So yeah, we're going through all of the generations within these two women's families, how the lives of their descendants are so different. And I know it's a very difficult, challenging, hard read, obviously just from that synopsis, but I'm ready.
Chicken. Are you a bit excited for chicken?
Hi, I'm about to talk about some really sad stuff. So before we get into it, I thought I would just talk about something happy. Just so that if you're not super high right now, you're not going to go super low. I'm just going to put you back where you were. It's going to be neutral. I got a cute little Christmas bookmark. Yay! I will link the store down below, but I just wanted to get a little Christmassy bookmark for the Christmas season. I should have thought of it a little bit earlier so that it could have been in more of my Vlogmas videos. But anyway, it's here now. It's adorable. It's a little snowman with a book and a cup of, I assume, hot chocolate. It's adorable. So, yeah, I hope that's boosted your spirits, because now we're going to talk about this book. Now, when I say I'm about to talk about stuff that's sad, that's the book content, not that, oh, it's sad, I'm not enjoying this book, because this book, incredible. So it's basically what I said before, a generational story following many generations that started with these two sisters who had very different paths in life, and how the differences between those two sisters manifest into the generations to come. And it's a tough read. Even the sister that had the better life, her family still have some tough shit going on. And it's not an easy read. It's in a very much historical context right now. I do not know how modern it gets at the end. We will just have to see, but I'm hoping it gets quite modern at the end. I think that'll be really interesting. So yeah, it is quite a historical context. It is during slavery and the European settlement. And so one of the sisters marries a slave trader, a white slave trader. She is kind of forced into a marriage with him. And one is sold as a slave. So completely different lives. And then we see how that has impacted all of the generations following. And I am only 3 generations in from each side of the family so far, but you can definitely see so many strings, you know, layering through all of these generations. And I assume they're going to continue being layered throughout the entire story. But it is so cleverly written. And not just because you can see the ways that the context within this family have impacted how these people have ended up being, but also the way that time changes people, in the way that you can see them being a little bit more open about certain things. The beliefs they have are completely different in some regards, and you can see how time also affects people so heavily as well. So it's such a nuanced book, looking at so many different elements to create these characters that are so believable. And again, I can see the threads of these families being weaved throughout this story, and it's just impeccable. It is so well written. And the most amazing thing about this is you're only with these characters for about 30-ish pages. They might like be talked about in the next part of that story, of that family's tale, but you really are only with that character for 30 pages. And I feel so heavily about all of them, whether good or bad. I just have a lot of emotions. And I feel like I'm ready to move on when it finishes. Like, it finishes and I'm not left unsatisfied, at least again with the first 6. I'm not left feeling like there's more there and I need more. Like, I'm satisfied. I've had enough with them and I'm ready to move on, which would be so hard. And she's going to do that so many times. And am I going to be satisfied with every single one? It's going to be really interesting to see. There are some that I would have liked to have seen more of, but not in a way that I wasn't satisfied. It was more just like, I really like this character. Like, I could have had a whole book about this character kind of thing. A lot of heavy topics discussed. Definitely look up content warnings, especially with the first 2 chapters. It's covering a time in history that is very unpleasant for the people that it's covering. And the thing is, this is history. This is what happened, and it should be talked about. It shouldn't just be thrown away. We know you have to talk about history. And this is stuff that I never learned in school. I didn't really learn about history outside of Australia or World War II. So I don't know much about this. I feel like this is such an important book. And I think it's really going to cover, and I mean, it already has so much, how things in the past are not just a thing that happened and that's it. They affect the generations, you know, forever. And we are seeing how there is patterns of behavior and patterns of thoughts and feelings going through all of these family members. And just because the first 2 women in this were slaves and then after that they weren't, isn't going to manifest and continue to stay throughout generations to come. It doesn't mean that the world around is going to completely change. So I think it is going to cover that. I'm really looking forward to seeing that play out. Even though it is very dark, it's a very intense tale. I think my favorite character so far to read about has probably been, I don't know, probably Essie. I think Essie's life has been the hardest so far, or her daughters. Their lives have been really, really awful. So I think that even though they're awful, they were the most moving stories because of that. And I think that is something you have to keep into consideration, that there are all of these separate little tales and you're not going to get closure on all of them in the way that, like, they're not all going to have happy endings. They're not all going to have their lives end in a way that's satisfying. It's very realistic of the times and of life in general, that things don't always end perfectly. You don't always have resolutions made. You don't always get things that are left unanswered answered. Like, you won't always meet these people. You won't always get these things back. And it's really sad and awful, but it's kind of just life. And I guess this is just a tale of life and the way that our ancestors play such a huge part in who we are. And there is actually a family tree at the start, but I'm not going to look at that because I like having the surprise of who's going to come up next. Even though, like, all I get is a name, I still like that element of I have no idea. So I am just kind of going in blind, but you do also have that, again, family tree at the start to go back to for reference. And I'm definitely going to have a look through it again at the end to kind of reflect back on things and remember the order that everyone was in. And if you enjoy historical fiction, this also has a lot of elements of historical fiction, because obviously the start is taking place quite a long time in the past. And it's kind of talking about the different kingdoms and the structures of these African nations, which is really interesting. Again, something I don't really know a lot about. I'm a little bit confused, but I feel like for the most part you can follow along. Just the different culture and customs, and it's interesting to see how they are going to change. I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to try and finish this today, and I'll update you when I'm finished. I look incredibly awful right now. I just need to edit this video tonight, and I cannot be bothered putting on makeup just to film this little ending clip. I have to put up with this hideous face. I could put like a filter of like a chipmunk over my face or something if you wanted, but I mean, by the time you're watching this, it's edited and uploaded, so I can't get feedback. Maybe I should put a poll on Instagram. Do you want my hideous, heinous, disgusting face or a chipmunk? I think I know the answer. So I have finished the lovely Homegoing. I don't know if you can tell, but I tabbed this a lot. This is out of shot. Come on, Meredith. Get into the middle of the camera. This is amazing. So much more than I thought it was going to be. I mean, it is what I thought, but more. I thought it was going to be this generational story, but I kind of thought that was pretty much mostly what it was going to be. It was going to be talking about a lot of different things, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of themes, but generally just kind of a story of generations. But it was just so much more, and I feel like it's really captured in the very last chapter. The last character that we follow, I feel like there are just so many dimensions to that story that just really tie everything up and really capture what the author was trying to really portray with this tale. And it is so powerful, just so smart. Like, this is just one of those books that you just sit back and you're like, I'm literally reading one of the best books ever written right now, and I am in awe. Track content warnings, because it is a lot, but if you think that it's something you will be able to handle to an extent, I highly recommend. There is a quote that I really want to read out. Obviously, there are a lot of passages in this that I really enjoyed, but there is one that stands out exponentially, and it is one of the best quotes I've ever read in a book. I was absolutely floored when I read it. I think it's a long time since I've read a quote that has made me just think that much just from one, quote. So this character is a teacher, and he is doing the first class of the year, and he is doing history, and so he's kind of opening the class with this open-ended, philosophical kind of question. And they're talking about history and how history is stories. History is compiled of stories that have been passed down. And then he pulls out this incredible quote. We believe the one who has the power. He is the one who gets to write the story. So when you study history, you must always ask yourself, Whose story am I missing? Whose voice was suppressed so that this voice could come forth? Yeah, my mind was blown. I had to pause and just think about that for quite a while. It was so thought-provoking, and I feel like that's kind of what this whole story is. I mean, obviously it's a lot of things, but it's kind of capturing this time in history, well, a lot of times in history, but again, the experience of African people, the colonization of Africa, slavery, and the experience from those people themselves and their families, their generations, and how there is this disconnect between the family members because of these situations, and the lack of heritage that they have, and the way that plays into their identity, and the way that is transferred between all the people in this family. And it's just a generational cycle of trauma and loss of heritage. And I don't want to say what the end of this book is, obviously, because spoilers, but it was so moving and beautiful and perfect. Like, this book is perfect. I cannot believe there are people out there that didn't give this book 5 stars, because my mind is blown. I can't even fathom how there are people out there that read this and didn't love it. Like, I know that's really obnoxious and annoying to say, but I honestly just cannot believe that you could read this and not be like, wow, that was bloody brilliant. Like, I don't know. There's just so much here. I can't even imagine how difficult this was to write. And the fact that she, to me, put it off perfectly is crazy, because there are so many different characters in completely different times, completely different stories. And again, they're all satisfying. And I could keep track of who was whose kid. And, you know, I'd have to kind of go back in my head. But I didn't go back to the family tree at the start, ever. I could remember, because they all just stuck out so well. And there were these visceral emotions that I had. And even if sometimes I had to pause and go, okay, yeah. I could always remember the at least first 2 since then, you know what I mean? And I could always remember who they were originally from the 2 sisters at the start. And I think it's really interesting to look at the way, no, I'm not gonna say that, that's spoiler. And it's heartfelt, it's beautiful, it's moving, it's distressing, it's challenging, it's tough, but it's brilliant. It's highlighting stories, things that really happened in the perspective of the people that never got to have a voice, that never got to say what happened, and how this time in history is so plagued by the people in power. Again, same as Australia's history. So it's just beautiful to read a story, even though it's fictionalized. It's based on things that happened, you know, like this is a time that happened. These are the sort of things that happen to people. These are things that get lost. These are things we never know about. You know, we don't know about all of the people and the ways that this time affected them. But this kind of captures, in a way, the kind of things that would have happened, and is like a way of expressing and giving voice to those stories that have been lost to history. And again, the disconnect within the families and the generations because of that disconnect, the lack of heritage and connection to your homeland, to your family. You can see the effects of that and how they can be quite negative when it comes to someone's identity and place in the world, and then therefore how they behave and the life choices that they make, the life chances that they have. And like, I'm talking about all these things, but this is probably just scratching the surface. I'm sure there's so much more deeper down that I would have to do many rereads of this to get everything. 5 stars. No wonder this was the highest rated book on my TBR. It's brilliant. And again, I highly recommend it if you think that you can handle it. If not, probably don't read this because it's tough. It was really, really tough. And the fact that I read this in like 2 days was probably not good for my mental health. That is going to do it for today's video. I can't wait for you to see part 2 later in Vlogmas, where I read my longest rated book, which is going to be a completely different experience, I'm sure. I've had a look at the book and I'm expecting absolute shit from it. It's going to be a good time. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really hope that you enjoyed, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow for Vlogmas. But until then, bye.
Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas.